In the summer of 1565, the tiny island of Malta became the front line in a battle that would determine the future of Europe. The sprawling Ottoman Empire, unmatched in military might and ambition, was poised to crush the last Christian stronghold in the Mediterranean. With an army of 40,000 fierce warriors, including the legendary Janissaries, Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent set his sights on Malta, a stepping stone to conquer Sicily, Italy, and beyond. On the other side, a mere 6,000 defenders braced for annihilation. The Knights of St. John, known as the Knights Hospitaller, the remnants of a once great crusading order, had nowhere to run and no immediate reinforcements in sight. Alongside Maltese militia and mercenaries, they were led by the unwavering Grand Master Jean Parisot de Valette, a man prepared to die defending the faith. Outnumbered nearly 7-1, they stood against the full force of the Ottoman Empire, with only the stone fortresses they managed to quickly put together. For 4 long months, these unlikely defenders faced wave after wave of Ottoman assaults in a siege so brutal, so desperate, that it would echo through history. What happened in Malta was not just a siege, it was a battle for survival, for faith, and for the future of Europe. Who knows, maybe the fate of me bringing you this content was on the line. The Knights just didn't know it yet. The stage was actually set years before the siege itself. In 1522, Sultan Suleiman's forces successfully drove the Knights Hospitaller from their home based on the island of Rhodes, forcing them to flee. After years of wandering, they were granted Malta as a fiefdom by the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. At first glance, Malta was an unassuming, barren island, lacking natural resources or significant wealth. However, the Knights soon recognized its strategic position at the crossroads of Mediterranean trade routes, and as a bastion against Ottoman expansion into Christian Europe. With this in mind, they quickly fortified the island and established a naval base, knowing that a visit by their Ottoman opponents was inevitable. By the mid-1500s, the Ottoman Empire had solidified its dominance across much of the Mediterranean. The Barbary corsairs, particularly the infamous Dragut, were terrorizing Christian ships and coastal settlements. Malta, under the leadership of the Knights Hospitaller, stood as a lone Christian stronghold in the region. After a failed Ottoman attempt to seize Malta in 1551, the Knights knew a more formidable assault was incoming. That earlier invasion had been led by the notorious Ottoman admiral Sinan Pasha and the fearsome corsair Dragut, known as the Sword of Islam. The Ottomans, determined to eliminate the Knights Hospitaller from their new stronghold, launched an attack with a force of around 10,000 men. However, despite their overwhelming numbers, the Knights and the Maltese defenders put up a fierce resistance. Unable to breach Malta's growing fortifications, and wary of the determined defence mounted by the Knights, Dragut and Sinan Pasha quickly realised that a direct assault on Malta would be more costly than anticipated. Instead of continuing the siege, the Ottomans shifted their focus to the smaller neighbouring island of Gozo, which they quickly overran, capturing nearly the entire population, 5,000 men, women and children, and enslaving them. Keep supporting us at No Filter History for more on how the Ottomans treat white slaves in their empire. They then turned their attention to the Knight-held city of Tripoli in modern-day Libya, which they captured later that year. Although Malta had been spared for the time being, the failed attack served as a warning to the Knights. Following the failed Ottoman invasion of 1551, Grand Master Juan de Homedes recognized that the threat was far from over. He ordered immediate improvements to Malta's defences, including the construction of Fort St. Elmo and Fort St. Michael, to fortify key positions on the island. When Jean Parisot de Valette became Grand Master in 1557, he expanded these fortifications, preparing for what he knew would be an inevitable and larger Ottoman assault. Under de Valette's leadership, Malta's defences were further strengthened, particularly around the Grand Harbour and the cities of Birgu and Senglia. The Knights, now better prepared, braced themselves for a battle that would determine the fate of Malta and Christendom. By May of 1565, the dreaded Ottoman fleet appeared on the horizon, an armada of 200 ships carrying tens of thousands of soldiers. Their goal? To seize Malta and use it as a launchpad for further conquests in Europe, including Sicily and the Italian mainland. Surrender wasn't an option for our brave knights and the Maltese militia. The Ottoman forces, commanded by Mustafa Pasha and Admiral Piyala Pasha, launched their campaign by targeting Fort St. Elmo, a small but strategically vital fortress that guarded the entrance to Malta's Grand Harbour. Although heavily outnumbered, the defenders of St. Elmo, which included a mix of knights and Maltese militia, fought valiantly. For weeks they withstood constant bombardments from Ottoman cannons and repeated assaults by waves of soldiers. The Ottomans had assumed the fort would fall in a matter of days. Instead, it held out for more than a month. During the siege of St. Elmo, the Ottoman morale was dealt a significant blow. One of the empire's most feared commanders, Dragut, was mortally wounded by a cannonball, possibly fired from Fort St. Angelo, although some argue it was actually friendly fire. Now that would have been a tough raven to send to Suleiman. Finally, after weeks of relentless fighting, Fort St. Elmo fell, and the remaining defenders were massacred. However, the Ottomans had paid a heavy price for the small fort, losing over 6,000 men in the process. Surveying the destruction, Mustafa Pasha famously remarked, "If this small son has cost us so dear, what price shall we have to pay for so large a father?" He was referring to the larger, more heavily fortified Fort St. Angelo and the city of Birgu, where the remaining defenders had concentrated their forces. The Ottomans, frustrated by the unrelenting resistance of the knights, resorted to psychological warfare. Mustafa Pasha, determined to break the defenders' spirits, ordered the decapitated bodies of the fallen knights crucified and floated across the harbour toward the Maltese strongholds. The Ottomans believed this horrifying display would demoralise the defenders and weaken their resolve. But instead of sowing fear, this macabre act had the opposite effect. The knights, far from being intimidated, were incensed. Grand Master Jean de Valette and his men saw the brutality as a call to fight harder. In a powerful act of defiance, they loaded their cannons with the severed heads of Ottoman soldiers and fired them back across the harbour, each shot carefully aimed at Ottoman positions. The message was clear: Malta would not be broken. With Fort St. Elmo reduced to rubble, the Ottomans shifted their focus to the more imposing Fort St. Angelo and the fortified cities of Birgu and Senglia. The next phase of the siege became a brutal battle of attrition. With continuous bombardments from both land and sea, the defenders, though outnumbered and exhausted, fought with incredible tenacity, refusing to yield to the relentless Ottoman assaults. One of the most daring Ottoman strategies during this phase was a plan to outflank the defenders by launching a naval attack on Fort St. Michael, located on the Senglia Peninsula. However, the defenders had anticipated such a move. They had secretly constructed artillery batteries at sea level, which lay in wait for the approaching Ottoman ships. As the Ottoman fleet advanced, these hidden cannons opened fire at point-blank range, decimating the enemy vessels. Many Ottoman ships were sunk, and hundreds of soldiers were killed. Despite the overwhelming odds, the defenders of Malta continued to hold their ground. Supplies were running dangerously low, and morale was faltering. But the Grand Master, Jean de Valette, rallied his forces. Now in his 70s, de Valette took up arms and fought alongside his men on the front lines, inspiring them to continue their desperate resistance against the Ottoman onslaught. By late August, both sides were nearing their breaking point. The Ottomans, having suffered tremendous losses from disease, starvation, and constant fighting, were desperate for a breakthrough. In a final effort to overwhelm the defenders, they launched a massive assault, hoping to crush the remaining forces and end the siege. However, the defenders of Malta were bolstered by the arrival of a small contingent of Sicilian reinforcements, which had been dispatched from the Kingdom of Spain. Although the force was small, its arrival renewed the spirits of the Maltese and the knights. Then came a carefully planned maneuver. A small band of Maltese soldiers launched a daring raid on the Ottoman camp, targeting the wounded and sick. The attackers, shouting as if they were part of a much larger force, created panic and confusion. Smoke from the burning camp and the chaos of the attack convinced the Ottomans that a large Christian relief army had finally arrived. Fearing they were about to be overwhelmed, the Ottomans temporarily withdrew, giving the defenders a crucial respite. As September approached, the real Sicilian reinforcements finally arrived, and the tide of the battle began to turn in favour of the defenders. Recognizing that they could not survive another winter on the island, the exhausted Ottoman forces decided to retreat. On September the 11th, 1565, the siege was officially lifted, and the remnants of the once mighty Ottoman fleet sailed back to Constantinople, their dreams of conquering Malta shattered. The siege of Malta was over, and against all odds, the Knights Hospitaller had triumphed. Of the original 40,000 Ottoman soldiers, only a fraction survived the siege, returning home in defeat. Malta, once viewed as a stepping stone for Ottoman expansion into Europe, had held firm, and the Knights of St. John, though greatly reduced in number, were hailed as heroes throughout the Christian world. The victory at Malta sent shockwaves across Europe. The siege had proven that the seemingly invincible Ottoman Empire could be stopped, and it galvanized European powers to resist Ottoman expansion. In the years that followed, this momentum culminated in the decisive Battle of Lepanto in 1571, where the Ottoman navy suffered a catastrophic defeat at the hands of the combined Christian fleet. For Malta, the siege became a symbol of resilience, faith, and unity. The city of Valette, named after Jean Parisot de Valette, was built as a fortress city to ensure that Malta would never again be caught unprepared. De Valette, the Grand Master who had led his men through the darkest hours of the siege, became immortalized as a legendary figure in European history. Imagine being one of the defenders, outnumbered nearly 10-1, fighting for your life on the walls of Fort St. Elmo or Fort St. Angelo. Would you have had the strength to hold the line? Could you have faced down an empire bent on your destruction? Comment below with your thoughts and let us know how you would have handled this siege. Would you have surrendered or fought to the bitter end like the Knights of Malta?